Alright, it's your man Brett from the Skateboarding Show. Hi and welcome to a potentially new series. Let's just see how this goes and see how we get on. He says adjusting the camera. Probably should have done that before I started. Where I'm going to be reading through what's called the Do Dai Ching. Apologies if I'm brutalizing the pronunciation of that. I was just looking for my drinks down there. The Do Dai Ching, that's how I believe it to be pronounced, although it's written with a T in some translations. It's an old text by Lao Tzu, who was a contemporary of Confucius, and it's the text that is the basis for the Taoist religion or Taoist spirituality or Taoist philosophy, depending how you look at it. And I was first introduced to it summer of '97, I think. It was just in between going from sixth form to allegedly university. I was skiving off for 6 months and did a lot of skateboarding and a bunch of other stuff that I shouldn't. Other stuff that I should have been doing, skateboarding that I should have been doing, and no university work that I should have been doing. And it was on a. I was working in a skate surf shop, and it was on a surfing video, and little quotes from it were coming up on the bottom of the video. I was like, that's kind of cool. I like that. I don't know much about that. I want to know more about it. So I brought a translation, and I really like it. And it suddenly has occurred to me that, of course, it is incredibly relevant to the world of skateboarding because well, hopefully that's part of what I'm going to explain. I'm going to read through it, and I'm gonna. It has 81, 82 little like sort of chapters, if you will, that are only like little poems, little bits of wisdom that it gives on life in general, but I think they're really pertinent to skateboarding. I just think they're really sort of connected to skateboarding, and one can connect them to skateboarding. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. There's a video version of this, and there's an audio version that is going to go up as well. Both are the same, so if you're listening to one or watching one, then you're not missing out on anything from the other one. So you can do your own research into Lao Tzu. As I say, my basic understanding is that he was a contemporary of Confucius. So we're talking about sort of 500 BC. So we're talking about 2,500 years ago. Funnily enough, although correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there who can be bothered, about the same sort of time as Socrates on the other side of the world in sort of Greece. But yeah, some great ideas. So without further ado, let's get started. So chapter 1. The Do that can be spoken of is not the ever constant Do. The name that can be named is not the ever constant name. That which is without name is the beginning of heaven and earth. That which possesses a name is the mother of the 10,000 creatures. Therefore, always without desire, thus you observe its subtle mystery. Always possessing desires, thus you observe its external appearances. These two, they arise from the same source, but have different names. This sameness is called their deep desire. Deep mystery. This sameness is called their deep mystery. Deep mysteries, and again deep mysteries. The gateway of many subtle mysteries. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the whole thing and then sort of give you not my interpretation of it, because there's many Taoist philosophers and scholars that have done that, so I don't need to do that. You can go and look that up yourself. I'm going to talk about how I personally think it relates kind of to skateboarding, and this one's a great one. Number one is a great one to start with because it's number one, but also because the Do that can be spoken of is not the ever constant Do. Is not the ever constant Do. The skateboarding that can be defined is not the constant skateboarding. It is not the real skateboarding. It is not the eternal skateboarding. It says here something about eternal, doesn't it? I think maybe, did they say? The name that can be named is not the ever constant name, so not the eternal name. That which is without name is the beginning of heaven and earth. That which possesses a name is the mother of the 10,000 creatures. So I think 10,000 creatures refers to something in Chinese mythology here, but that which possesses a name. So it's saying that which can be named is the identifier of things, whereas that which cannot be named is the identifier of that which cannot be spoken of, is the identifier of the do, the way. Yeah. So when you think you know what skateboarding is, you probably you might know what one element of skateboarding is. Maybe skateboarding can't be defined. And it would be really easy to give it all the cliches about skateboarding can't be defined because there's only your skateboarding or my skateboarding or someone else's skateboarding, and that's true, and we could call it a cliche, but it's true that skateboarding is individualistic and it only exists for individual people. But and we're not just getting at the idea that there's no objective reality of skateboarding. I think we're getting at something a little bit more ethereal here, that it's hard to define what skateboarding is because it has a sort of nameless quality to it. It has something that just when you think you've understood it, you understand how little you understand about it. Because it's not vert skateboarding or freestyle or street or slalom or longboarding. It's not all of those things. It's not none of those things. It is a mixture of all of it and none of it and some of it and your version of it and my version of it and someone else's version of it. Those are all part of the reality of skateboarding, but they are not the skateboarding. Yeah, because the skateboarding is really, really hard to define. The skateboarding is without a name. It's not easy to identify. So the skateboarding that can be spoken of is not the ever constant skateboarding. Therefore, without desire, thus you observe its subtle mystery. Without trying too hard, you might touch on it, you might get a feeling of it, you might even sense it, but always possessing desires, thus you observe its external appearances. And I suffer from this. The more I try and grab hold of the skateboarding, the more I possess a desire to grab it and get hold of it and know what it is, the less I know what I'm doing, and the less I know of what's going on. These two, they arise from the same source but have different names. This sameness is called their deep mystery. So there's this skateboarding that you can't identify and that you can't name, and then there's the skateboarding that you can, and they come from the same place. And it's a matter of trying to let go of grabbing it, and at the same time still having an interest in it, and still being interested in it and being aware of it. Deep mysteries, and again deep mysteries, the gateway of many subtle mysteries. That is I've said before and I'll say it again, skateboarding is subtle, and it has subtle mysteries. Does the skateboarding exist down the Dean Lane on the Dean Lane Fun Day? Does it exist down Dean Lane on an average Saturday afternoon? Does it exist at Hemel Hempstead this weekend for Skateboard GB Championships? Does it exist at Team Trouble and the jam they're having there? Does it exist down your local skate park with a bunch of people who don't know about Dean Lane, don't know about Skateboard GB, and don't know about anything else but just know about their local skate park and their mates? Does it exist with the beginner who's only been doing it a week, or does it exist with the experienced guy who's been doing it 30, 40 years? These are subtle mysteries. And if you think you know the answer to those, then maybe you're not really grasping the actualness of it. You've got an opinion, you've got a thought about it, and you're totally entitled and welcome to that opinion and thought about it. But because skateboarding's subtle, it's like trying to describe what God is, right? What God is completely different for each person. It's not to say they're right or they're wrong, but it's not the definitive answer. And maybe there is no definitive answer to what the skateboarding is, or what skateboarding is in general. And that's part of the subtlety of it, and that's part of the brilliance, and dare I even say the spiritual nature of skateboarding, which allows it to be something that is hard to grasp, it's hard to grab onto, it's hard to commodify. People try to commodify it, and people try to monetize it, and they try to give it a numerical score and judge it, and it is possible, but at the same time, is it? And is that the skateboarding? Is competition skateboarding? Maybe it is. And for some people it is, and for some people it isn't. But perhaps, just perhaps, what the real deal is that the skateboarding that can be spoken of is not the ever constant skateboarding. Because the skateboarding that can be spoken of right now is the skateboarding that exists in 2023. It's not the same skateboarding that was about in 1987. It's not the same skateboarding that was about in 1979. It's not the same skateboarding that was about in 1993. And that I can definitely tell you from experience, that 87 and 79 I don't know anything about, but the 93 skateboarding I know full well is nothing like the skateboarding that exists right now. So I'm not only getting at the idea that it changes through time. That's not the only reason why the skateboarding that can be spoken of is not the ever constant skateboarding. That is not the only reason. It's because skateboarding both kind of exists and doesn't exist. You know, it's a conceptual idea in a way. There's the reality of doing skateboarding tricks, but like I've just said, so does that mean the skateboarding done by the 50-year-old is the skateboarding, and therefore the skateboarding done by the 10-year-old who's only just got a board last week isn't the skateboarding? Well, no, it's, you know, we know that both of them are, but then that means that not one thing is the skateboarding. That's what they're getting at. The skateboarding that can be spoken of is not the ever constant thing, because if you speak about something, you're only speaking about one thing at a time. You know, the skateboarding doesn't just live at Dean Lane, and it's not that it also lives at some small little village skate park where there's only 2 or 3 people. It's both of those things and neither of those things, which again is a very subtle element that you don't need to understand, and that you don't need to be interested in to do skateboarding. That's also part of the beauty of what we're talking about here, that this is just some musings of a wannabe big mouth narcissistic extrovert who wants to go on video and recording to say this stuff, and who overanalyzes this stuff. And I'm completely aware that I overanalyze it. This is for all you other people that want to explore the philosophical elements of skateboarding and overanalyze and over-egg the hell out of it. Okay, because skateboarding's not simple. It's not a simple case of, oh, I know what it is, I know what it's all about. If you think you do know what it is, and you think you do know what it's about, maybe you haven't quite grasped the subtle nature and the subtle nuanced nature of skateboarding, and the fact that it might well be what you think it is, and it might not also be as well at the same time. Yeah. So, the dough that can be spoken of is not the ever constant dough. The name that can be named is not the ever constant name. That which is without name is the beginning of heaven on earth. That which possesses a name is the mother of the 10,000 creatures. Therefore, always without desire, thus you observe its subtle mystery. Always possessing desires, thus you observe its external appearances. These two, they arise from the same source, but have different names. This sameness is called their deep mystery. Deep mysteries, and again, deep mysteries. The gateway of many subtle mysteries. Thank you. I might well continue to do these. This is your man Brett from the Skateboarding Show reading a copyright-free edition of the Dog Dai Ching by Lao Si and connecting it to skateboarding, because life is skateboarding and skateboarding is life. Thank you for joining me. Please join me back for chapter 2 if you feel like it, or go skateboarding, because that's probably a better spend of your time. All right, thank you very much. Cheers. Bye bye.